All right, here we go again. 2 weeks in a row. That becomes a thing, right?
That's right.
Taking it back to the old fantasy football podcast. Is it a thing now?
It's a thing. It could be a thing.
All right, I'm with Curtis Allen once again. I didn't properly introduce you last time because we got disconnected. Radio God of Champaign, Wixie 100.3 morning show host. And I was thinking actually this morning when I was meeting with Dr. Beef about my list that odds are if you call a random radio station morning show in Champaign, you could probably have a decent wrestling conversation in town.
Absolutely.
Between you and then Doug on Rewind and Tim on Mix 94.5, like heavy wrestling knowledge in local Champaign radio.
It runs deep. Yes, it runs very deep. We spend many days booking the territory, as they say, trying to figure out what's going to happen next in the world of pro wrestling and radio for that matter as well. So
I already don't even know what that means. So I'm out of my element a little bit here, but you just recently had a birthday and congratulations on that. Another
Thank
year
you.
around the sun.
Yeah.
And I said, man, you pick. And you went with top 5 professional wrestlers of all time. So we hit the lab. It got musty in there. Things were spilled. So now we're in the library. We had to get research. But I think I'm ready. I definitely think I have one that would be a surprise for you.
Okay.
I believe we probably both have the same number one answer. I'm guessing.
We're going to see. It's going to be close. I don't know.
Based on conversations, I thought maybe, but maybe not. So as we do, I'm going to let you have the honors and start with your number 5, top 5 professional wrestlers of all time.
Well, my number 5 is one of the biggest stars in the history of pro wrestling, and I'd say he is the ultimate crossover star from the world of pro wrestling. He's a multi-time WWE champion. He's headlined WrestleMania several times over, including a thrilling trilogy with Stone Cold Steve Austin. I'm talking about the great one, Jabroni. The Rock is my number 5 on the list of the all-time greats.
Some people might have him number 1.
Some people might.
Some people might.
Those would probably be fans of the Fast and the Furious movies, I would guess.
I don't even have him on my list, so I don't think so. And I'm a huge fan of the Fast and Furious movies. So,
it was one of those things I debated. He was the toughest pick, quite frankly, on my top 5, because there's so many other wrestlers that I gave consideration to that I'll give some love to throughout the show here. But The Rock is my number 5. And he could be number 1 depending on whether you were an Austin or Rock guy, because they came up at the same time, in the same era, and were both huge megastars. But, I mean, now the dude owns his own football organization. He just bought the NFL for pennies compared to what Vince McMahon is. Think about that. He bought a football organization from his former boss for pennies compared to what Vince McMahon spit. That's a billion-dollar entity he got for $15 million because he's The Rock. Because not only is he one of the greatest wrestlers of all time,
don't do it,
but he's such a great businessman too, and he's a great actor. What?
No Ballers, man.
Did you see Ballers? What happened with Ballers? That's art imitating
I quit
life.
watching. That's what happened.
Well, spoiler: The Rock buys the Kansas City Chiefs and wins a Super Bowl with Patrick Mahomes. So.
Brilliant.
What happened? Mahomes won a Super Bowl. The Rock now owns a football organization. He owns the XFL. So,
all right. I haven't considered The Rock. I will give a little background here. As you are the expert in this field.
Oh yes. I
do have a team of researchers behind me and disappearing hands. So, ergo, when I watched wrestling the most was late 90s, early millennium. That was like my college days. So The Rock was heavily influential and was, amazing. The mic work was unparalleled. Like, the reason I kept him off my list was he sold out. The guys on my list have lived wrestling, have run it to the core. They either left because they got too old or too injured. They just lived the lifestyle. The Rock realized and harnessed his ability as an actor, as bigger things, other projects he wanted to get on. He had the Tooth Fairy to make. I mean, it was big things were coming up. And so he exited before really, I mean, maybe at his peak, and there's something to be said there for doing that, you know, exiting gracefully on the top of the game rather than fading off into, you know, doing undercard matches when you're like 45. But there's something to be said there in that. And that's kind of why I felt like he left too soon. And obviously he's done amazing things and made the right decision. He's like a billionaire. I'm sure that XFL thing was like equivalent to the change I find in my couch, but I couldn't put him on my top 5 list because of that. Like when he left, I was like, I want more.
Well, isn't there something to be said for leaving him wanting more? And he did come back, and he won the strap again, and headlined a couple 3 WrestleManias. Had some pretty good matches, quite frankly, with guys like CM Punk and John Cena, you know. But I guess you still have some sour grapes about him leaving on time. And when he left, by the way, when he left in 2003, he went out thinking, a lot of people thinking, that by losing to Goldberg, he had set up WWE for the next several years to have Bill Goldberg be, you know, sort of the top guy there for a while, which didn't happen. But that's
I'm not saying he was shady. I'm not saying like he left them high and dry or anything like that. I'm just saying by exiting when he was still at the peak of his powers, he robbed the fans of countless years of wrestling entertainment to, you know, make the gridiron or whatever. You know, those first few years when he had to earn his stripes in the acting field, it was rough. But
well, he got the Disney.
I'm not faulting him for it. I'm just leaving him off my list for it, is what basically, you know, which I'm sure at home he's going to be hurt once he hears all about this with the dozens and dozens of fans watching at home, that he's going to be like, hey, man, Ryan Leskis left me off his top 5 list. I better get back on the road and head to Champaign, Illinois to fill the State Farm Center in 2021. That said, that's why I couldn't put him on my list personally. But I don't fault the pick. I think it's a great pick. Some of the, you know, shenanigans and the mic work and the catchphrases and the pops that he would get, like, I mean, it's on another level. So it's a great pick.
Okay, thank you. Well, who's your number 5?
Mine, I think you wouldn't guess in 20 guesses. But I put him at number 5 because I believe he is the most underrated wrestler of all time. He is held. Oh, actually, I'll give a couple clues and see if you can guess it.
Bring it.
He has won 21 championships over different wrestling organizations.
Chris Jericho.
No, he is the only wrestler alive to have won a WWE championship, a TNA championship, and an ECW championship.
Are you going RVD?
I am going RVD. Rob Van Dam, my number 5 wrestler of all time, extremely underrated.
Oh, yeah.
I loved his persona. I loved his laid-back attitude. He was a flyer. He had acrobatics, you know, he charisma that just, it never really caught, I don't think, with the public as well as it should have. Maybe it was how he was pushed or whatever. But I remember a specific scene when like Triple H was coming back and he was all getting pumped and everybody was all Triple H this and that. And behind the scenes, they were like coming back and forth. And he was like, hey, man, you can really drink some water. I lost it because I never understood that part of Triple H's entry. It's like, oh, you're spitting water all over the place. That's raw, dude. That's really tough, guy. But it was just one of those things. always stuck with me. Like I love the guy, and he was a consummate worker. And again, going from platform to platform, he did Extreme, as I mentioned, ECW, Extreme Championship Wrestling. So, I mean, he had to run the gamut of taking a lot of hits, bleeding, jumping, flying, kicks. He just did it all, man. I was always a big fan of his, and I think he never really got his due. So that's why a lot of mine have themes as like the most this or the most that. I think he's definitely the most underrated wrestler ever. And I put him in.
Van Dam is he's one of my all-time personal favorites. I had a hard time leaving him off the list. He's my favorite ECW wrestler ever. He is, to your point, so underrated and so imitated too. So many guys now kind of bite his style and do the things that he did, and he's still doing his thing. He's still and he's at this point in his career where he kind of picks and chooses what he wants to do, and he's working for Impact Wrestling again. I think in a limited role. He had a documentary that came out, a year ago, and it was about concussions. And he didn't realize how many concussions he had in his career. It's a fascinating watch and a really good inside look at that business of pro wrestling. But love Van Dam, man. I don't have anything bad to say about RVD. Although there's a part of me that thinks you picked him just because of Jean-Claude Van Damme. I feel like that's part of why RVD made the cut.
I'm not going to lie and say that might have been my initial draw to him when I first learned of him, that I was like, what? There's another Van Damme? And, I might have like mentally dog-eared that wrestler as someone that I definitely want to keep an eye out for. But like, just his whole demeanor, like it was so chill that I can't recall like another wrestler being like in the ring, jumping around, doing what he can do, and then like back scene, it was just like, hey man, like, oh hey, how's it going? Like I love that whole persona, and it's just maybe it just didn't pop enough, but I love that guy, and again, 21 titles. I mean, he went to where he needed to go, and I mean, he was one of TNA's like biggest stars for a long time, and again, it put in the work at ECW. I love the guy.
Oh yeah.
So hit me with your number 4, Curtis Allen.
Oh, my number 4 could have ended up higher on my list, but he ends up here. He is, in my opinion, the biggest attraction in the history of the business of pro wrestling. With all due respect to one Andre the Giant and a handful of others. My number 4, I can't tell how many championships he's won, but I know every time I got to see him perform live because it was special and it was like an event anytime he was on TV, and that's The Undertaker, my friend. The recently retired Undertaker in at number 4 on my all-time great list.
Well, spoiler alert, that's my number 2, actually.
Ooh.
Again, going back to, but no, you start ahead. This is your dance floor right now.
The first, I mean, like it's burned in my memory. You mentioned the State Farm Center. The first time I saw The Undertaker, I was 6 years old, I think. Yeah, 6 or 7, against the Ultimate Warrior in Champaign at a house show for the WWF title. And I remember being really confused why all the people in the crowd were cheering The Undertaker and booing the Warrior for the most part.
Right.
It was all the little kids. It was all kids my age, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. They were going crazy for the Ultimate Warrior, but otherwise, high school guys, college guys, the dads were just going nuts for The Undertaker and booing the Warrior. And that was my first sort of – I remember my dad cheering for The Undertaker too, but he always cheered for the bad guys just to mess with me when I was a kid. But that was one of those deals where he wasn't the only one. I'm looking around like, this is ridiculous. Don't they know he's the dead man? He's evil. And then that character, like it just morphed, for 20 some odd years, 30 years. And it went through the crazy satanic phase and the Attitude Era, which is probably when he was at his height performing in the ring. And then The Undertaker, he's got the American Badass gimmick where he comes out on the Harley and rides around the ring with the American flag. But he never had a bad performance. In a lot of ways, he's sort of like the Michael Jordan of pro wrestling. Like, he was obsessed with the performance.
Yeah.
And if you watch that document, there's a documentary that just came out about him and his the end of his career. He always felt like if he couldn't do it at that level, then it wasn't worth it. And he also had that, like the streak, man, the Undertaker.
I was going to bring that up.
the streak at WrestleMania.
21?
21, yeah. Until it was defeated by someone who I wish I had more room to put him on the list. I didn't have room for Brock Lesnar. Otherwise, I might. And I know a lot of people get angry about me saying that, but that was also Undertaker's choice. He felt, well, there's nobody more legitimate. If someone's going to end my streak, it's my choice, Brock Lesnar. So, but Undertaker, my number 4, greatest attraction ever in wrestling.
And that's why I put him number 2. Again, the guy, like I said, I chose my wrestlers based on their commitment to the craft. And like you said, for 21 straight WrestleManias, the guy, his hand was raised. And we're talking Ring on Fire matches, Buried Alive matches, just like the different shticks they put him through. And I remember when I was a kid, the first time seeing him was like one of the first times he ever debuted, and like it was just the dark lights and the gong, and I was just kind of like, what the shit is this? Like, and Paul Bearer would come out with his urn, and woo, and I'm just like, I have no idea.
Paul Bearer.
What's that?
I got a quick Paul Bearer story for you.
Oh. Always want a Paul Bearer story.
Well, remember the funeral parlor, it's Paul Bearer's interview segment with The Undertaker. Mm-hmm. So this is in Terre Haute at the Holman Center, and they filmed like 6 hours of TV there, including a Saturday night's main event. But a lot of stuff involved The Undertaker. And and Dad got us these great seats. We're right next to where like Mean Gene Okerlund would do the interviews, and he's interviewing Flair and Savage and these guys. And then the funeral parlor was off to the side, and they get all the fog going. And you see this TV producer counting down, and you see Percy Pringle, Paul Bearer, sticks his head out of the fog. He's like, what the hell's going on? Are we recording yet or what? And the guy goes, you're on. He goes, oh, yes. Right away. It was just the funniest thing. So,
right into character, man.
And that was like when I was a kid again, one of those first times when, hey, he's not really Paul Bearer. He just yelled, what the hell's going on? But anyways, sorry. Continue, sir.
No. I love the anecdotes, man, and that's just kind of where I'm at with it. It just kept going and kept going and kept going, and then there'd be new moves or choke slams to tombstones. Careful. And then of course, like I never understood, like you got a Zoom bomb. I love you, buddy.
I'm also doing Clash Royale training camp.
Oh yeah, you are. And you're crushing it.
I'm crushing it.
Crushing it. Like The Undertaker would.
Right? My kids just appear out of thin air. And then, but yeah, it was just constant, like, and then it would be, I still don't understand what the hell old school is. Like, I see the move, and Jim loses his thing like he always does and has this key phrase, oh, he's going old school, because he has to walk the rope and then just, like, hit his shoulder. I don't really get it, but it's one of those things. But it just kept being, like, reinventing and adding new, like, moves to the repertoire, like I always dug, where it was just like, and as a sidebar, I'm all about theatrics in moves. These guys didn't make my list, but I love Shake, Rattle, and Roll from Road Dogg Jesse James. Makes no sense, but it's all moves and then down. The People's Elbow obviously is one of them. Scotty 2 Hotty doing the worm. My man Booker T, which I wish I could have fit on my list, but doing a full like helicopter spin-a-rooney. For no reason, it doesn't add anything to the impact, but the theatrics of it all, I love that. So when he walked the tightrope and did his thing, I was down for it, but I never really understood the power of that move. But it's a fantastic pick, and I put him number 2. I think he's literally one of the greatest ever, and the matches were iconic. And so, yeah, that's where it is.
There you go. Well, who's your number 4 then?
You already spoiled it, man. My number 4 is Y2J Chris Jericho, man.
Man, I wanted Jericho on my list, but I went with The Rock. That was the toss-up between The Rock and Jericho and Van Dam, so it was tough for me.
I mean, if you want to talk titles, we can talk titles, but he's held them all. Yeah. Talking about pops, that's a term I've learned, pops. One of the biggest pops I ever heard was when Jericho debuted on WWE. I wasn't one of the people that researched like the internet and stuff, because a lot of people go on these message boards and learn spoilers and stuff, and I never really did that because I watched it once a week. It was only Monday nights. I wanted to be surprised, et cetera, et cetera. But for weeks, they've been doing like this countdown. Just so it would pop up on the Jumbotron and meh, meh, meh. And then finally when it hit 0 and the whole break the walls down and like the whole crowd just, I mean,
Yeah.
I haven't heard a crowd like that on TV maybe ever. And it was just amazing. And he came out and he just owned WWE for a while. And you know, he would do interviews and he always, one of the things I loved about him, not even in the ring, but his ability to play off each individual wrestler. Like he would take the heat. If he needed to take the heat, he'd be the butt of the joke if The Rock
for sure
mess with him all the time. And he would play it perfectly where he'd be like, oh yeah, you know, I do that, sure. And the crowd's like thinking that he doesn't get the reference The Rock is making, but he gets it. But he's just like, oh yeah, man, I don't. But he would just play it perfectly, and the crowd's just more fawning over The Rock. He's supposedly embarrassing this guy, and he just played it beautifully. And then, you know, I haven't kept up on wrestling in a long time, but, you know, to hear him and what he's doing with AEW and thing like that and how that is like the future of wrestling, again, kind of goes with my theme that the guy, and besides being in a band and doing, you know, his minor acting here and there and stuff, is still sticking with it. He was like the first AEW champion, and like, you know, he's carrying the torch over there and starting his new thing. Just from top to bottom, he's in many iconic matches. I had Professor Jim Eagle looking up the top matches of all time. He's in at least like 5 to 6 of them, no matter what list you go by, if it's Bleacher Report or whoever that's doing one of those trendy lists on the internet. But always, man, I love his moves. I love the Walls of Jericho. I love his springboard. It's just always fun to watch him. He's a great technical worker. He works with everybody, and usually the match is always fun, no matter when he's in it. So I think top to bottom, he's definitely one of the top 5 wrestlers of all time.
Oh, for sure. And it was, like I said, it was really hard not to have Jericho on my list because I love him so much. I love Jericho. And you were talking about the stuff he's done outside. You mentioned his band, Fozzy. Dude was way ahead of the game on podcasts. He was, to me, it was like him and Austin were the first 2 guys that really jumped into his. Now every pro wrestler has their own podcast, but if it wasn't for Jericho, gonna, you know, forgive the pun, breaking those walls down for pro wrestlers, and it's consistently in the top 5 for sports podcasts. And he's interviewing people, you know, from the world of music, from acting, politics, you know, which is cool that he's able to do that, and he still works his regular wrestling schedule with AEW.
Right.
He legitimized that organization too. Like, I don't know if AEW debuts the way it did without him, you know, on board. So big fan of Jericho's, and I really enjoy that pick, sir. Good pick.
We're researching here, man. This is science.
It is. It's a big thing. So we're not just pulling this out of our ass. And
no, man. I grabbed a book back here and I pulled it down. And I was like, oh.
Yep. You see all the books behind me in my library. So.
Right. You look comfier though. I'm sitting on a wooden chair. So
I'm in a nice bed.
I need to learn from you.
Comfortably, yes. No, I'm not going to sit in a chair for this. I mean, I'm holding the phone. You know, I'm on my trusty iPhone. So I apologize. Yeah, I apologize if it's shaking. It just, I don't get a lot of good internet service in this particular room, so I gotta make do with what I got. That's a sacrifice I make for the Ryan Leskis show.
We have no idea what the hell this is, but it's just it's adult conversation, and I love it. So
I think we should call it Leskis in late afternoon or something like that, because that's when we're doing this. Something along the line. You think about that. But
I'm gonna write it down.
All right,
Dr. Beef, write that down.
Dr. Beef. Well, my number 3. Moving this along on late afternoon with Leskis. Again, he could be a number 1 on a lot of people's lists. And I know I'm pretty sure he's not going to be on yours, though. I have a hunch he's not on yours. And a lot of people's he'd be number 1. probably pro wrestling's biggest star ever, brother. That would be the Hulkster, Hulk Hogan, the one and only Hollywood Hulk Hogan when he was a heel in the NWO. Look at Leska shaking his head no over there. What you going to do, brother, when Hulkamania runs wild on you? There's no WrestleMania without Hulk Hogan. There's no NWO without Hulk Hogan. He is immortal, brother. And,
I'll give you NWO. I'll give you NWO. There would still be WrestleMania without Hulk Hogan. But my problem with the Hulkster was the actual in-ring work. Like, I found his matches incredibly boring. I don't like the leg drop. All of a sudden, he turned into a robot and couldn't be hurt. I didn't like the Hulk up. It's from
you didn't like the Hulk up, brother?
No. I like your impression, though, man. You do a good Hogan, but I get it. I was a kid, and I watched the cartoon, and I was eating my vitamins and doing all that stuff. But at a certain point, it just got tired for me, and I just didn't really, maybe it's just a sign of aging and that when he was working. But I got bored of the shtick, and I just, I'm going to leave all outside of wrestling commentary aside. But I just didn't really dig him, man. And even I would say in the NWO, he looked cool, and he definitely spearheaded that. With the guy I wish I could have made a case for. I love Razor Ramon so much. Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, but there's no way I can put them on my list. But those three pretty much legitimized it, and I get it. I love Mr. Nanny too. I mean, it was a wonderful feature, but
yeah,
I couldn't do it, man. The leg drop. That's it. The leg drop. That's what you got. Give me some theatrics with it. I was just telling you about theatrics. I guess he did the thing, but did he do that before the leg drop, or that was after the match, right? When he'd call for the crowd? He didn't do that before.
Come down to the ring, point at his opponent, fire up the crowd, rip the shirt off, the headband, the whole deal, slap the muscles, ready for war. The Hulkster, brother. He's real American.
It's Always Sunny. D made the wonderful comment that his skin looked like a hot dog, and I think that was one of the best. And he had doll hair. Very fine,
Well, I think at this point, most people know the Hulkster has been wearing a wig back there for a while. That's spoiler. Yeah.
Well, I'm not faulting him on that.
But to your point about his in-ring work, when he would work in America, yes, less and less was more for Hulk Hogan. He didn't have to do it. Just one big right hand and people would go crazy. One big chop and people would go crazy. But if you ever watched any of the Hulkster stuff, this is for the diehard wrestling fans, if you ever find any of his stuff he did in the 80s and 90s in Japan, Hulkster could work, brother. You're going to see Hogan doing drop kicks and chain wrestling and all this stuff that, like, the fans of the technical side of it, the fans that love the nuts and bolts about wrestling more so than the theatrics and the presentation, which Hogan was known for,
right.
They would respect. But I get it. He's most known for what he did, obviously, in the WWF and WCW, and but still, he's iconic. There you go, brother. And to body slam, he hoisted Andre the Giant up over his head with the power of the Hulkamaniacs and slammed him in front of 93,000. Yes. So I couldn't. Andre was a tough one to leave off my list too, especially. Yeah. But I compared him and Taker. But for Hogan, I grew up as a little Hulkamaniac. And here's where it was like finding out that Santa isn't real. I remember being in the grocery store. They did an angle. Yeah, sorry. They did the angle where Earthquake broke, or it was a Big Boss Man. It was a Big Boss Man broke Hulk Hogan's ribs, and they beat him up, and it was like they were showing it as if he may be done. He was never going to wrestle again. And as a 6-year-old kid, it just devastated me, right? And then a week later, I'm in the grocery store with my mom and dad, and there was a section that had all these magazines. That had a bunch of pro wrestling magazines in it. And one of them was like, Hulk Hogan returns to IWGP in Japan to wrestle so-and-so. And I remember holding it going, what? In the middle of it's called Bridwell's. It's no longer there. Bridwell's grocery store in Paris, just having a meltdown. And Dad goes, well, yeah, he's fine. He just went over there for a little while. He'll be back.
Right. He had to get a little paper. He had to, spread his brand. But, and you mentioned someone else earlier, which I kind of liken to this as Goldberg. When that thing started on WCW, it was still in the middle of the wars between WWE and WCW. And I remember I would turn to WCW just for the streak and for him to rage out, come in, spear, pile, done. The match lasted like 60 seconds, if that.
Yep.
But that was like the thing, and it wasn't much to it. It wasn't a technical match. He came in, he looked like he just did like 6-8 balls of blow and just ran through folks, and then that was it. But it was like, when's it going to happen? And early on, before his rise, it happened in the first hour, and then it was in the second hour, and then he became Goldberg. But then by the time he was Goldberg, I was just like, I'm over it, man. Like, this is 160s. You shouldn't have kept score, man. Like, I'm watching 160 of these damn things, man. Like, it's advance the repertoire, man. So it's kind of that, where it was just like, okay, come in, 1-3 things, and then it's over. So that's part of the reason why I didn't want to. It's not his racism.
No.
Sorry, did I sneak that in?
I can't. I'm not going to defend that.
I know. I said it's in-ring work only. That slipped out. That's on me. That's my bad.
Yeah, the in-ring work only. Well, I'm going to quote someone I know who says, when I'm watching things like The Fast and the Furious, I'm not looking for Scorsese, man. I know what I'm going to get from these movies. I know what I'm going to get from a Hogan match. I know what I'm going to get from a Goldberg match, and it's still entertaining. But you went beyond the in-ring stuff, so we can go ahead and move on to your number 3, if we could, and not talk about.
Touche. I won't rebut. We're not talking movies today, and I will progress. My number 3 is someone I thought I might have already heard from you by now. So I was worried. After you dropped Taker, I thought you were going to put him here next. But this guy took more bumps than anybody you can ever think of. In wrestling history. His tooth went through his nose at the famous Hell in a Cell match. And then he's made a documentary about mall Santas. An all-around great guy, added levity to the sport. He's been Dude Love, Cactus Jack, Mankind, and we're talking, of course, of Mr. Mick Foley, my number 3 wrestler of all time. The I Quit match with Rock. Oh. I still have it on VHS in the basement, man. The amount of chair shots that man took that night.
Tough to watch.
After a while, yeah. And I was about that at the time. I'm like, yeah, more extreme, more blood. Yeah, do it. But, I'm like, enough, dude. Like, are you sure? Like, is this still on script? Like, how many? It's like, I started counting after it got ridiculous, and I think I was still in the 20s by the time it ended. I own his documentary. I own his kid's book. He's a wonderful man. I'm surprised he can still talk coherently, and he does with eloquence, and he's a wonderful guy. And like I said, I think there just needed to be a balance, but he could actually do the work and still be funny and still be entertaining. And like I said, change his personas, but each time be a little bit different and fun. But I mean, my goodness, man, the dude took some shots that it was unbelievable.
Oh,
I love the guy.
If I were gonna see, here's the thing. It might surprise you. Mick's not on my list, but if I were gonna make a list of my 5 personal favorite wrestlers, the guys that I just enjoyed, Mick's number 1. Mick's probably 1, Jericho's 2, and Van Damme's probably 3. And I was looking at this in totality of career and impact on pro wrestling and the whole package.
I am too.
But my
research.
I remember one of the knocks that, and Mick's addressed this over the years, is that he influenced all these sort of backyard wrestlers that weren't trained to emulate the stuff that he was doing, and how dangerous that was. And he took some heat during the height of the Attitude Era of, you know, should Vince McMahon and the WWE and WWF at the time and Mick Foley and Undertaker, should these guys harbor some responsibility for kids, you know, emulating what they're seeing on TV? And that's a whole other discussion, but Mick always handled that with such, to your point, grace, eloquence. And he said this more than once, where he would do these interviews with, you know, national news outlets, and they're looking at him thinking, well, who's this idiot in his flannel shirt? And then he opens his mouth talking, and they realize, oh, this man is very, very intelligent. And he also happens to be, you know, 6'4" and 280 pounds and seemingly indestructible, even though he's, you know. And he just lost like 100 pounds recently doing DDP yoga. I'm surprised you haven't mentioned DDP yet.
Thought about it. He was on the list, especially for the theatrics, but no, I didn't.
But Mick he's actually in pretty good health these days when you look back at his career and the stuff that he did to himself. But absolutely love Mick Foley, man. If it was just my 5 personal favorites, Mick's number 1 for sure. Love the pick. Love that he made your top 5.
Yeah, man. And to that point as well, I mean, the guy made sock puppets, you know, and did like the first time I ever heard him speak, I was shocked. I was expecting him to kind of be like, do. And it was amazing. And to watch the documentary, that message he leaves on I think it was an answering machine at the time for his wife, you know, that was scary. And that kind of shows. So, you know, when you were talking about Van Damme and the concussions, like, I mean, like I said, it's amazing that it's like he's built different. You know, it's like he's got your brain has a shell on it, Tommy Boy quote, you know, like how is he still like speaking? Yeah. But it's some of the most fun I've had watching wrestling ever. You know, the Rock and Sock connection, like he found ways to like interweave himself in. Because even though the fans loved him, he rarely held the strap, you know, and he wasn't really like put over as like the best wrestler there, but he always could get over somebody at any time. You never knew when, he pulled off the win, because a lot of times you expected him just to take the huge bump and then go. But they definitely had a lot of fun with him, and he always found his way to work it in. So
you remember the first time he won the belt? And that was the infamous thing on WCW where they gave away the results. And
I heard about that.
Yeah. No,
I remember when he won the belt, but I only heard about that they spoiled it in listening to a podcast about the wrestling war.
Gotcha. I remember that night. I'm sure he's one of the dozens and dozens that's watching this. My friend Matt Dixon and I were watching, big wrestling fans. We were going back and forth. And when Tony Schiavone said that Mick Foley was going to win the belt, Matt and I, that was it. We turned over to Raw, and they actually, and actually what people forget is like they did a little tease in the middle of Raw where it looked like he wasn't going to win the belt and there wasn't going to be a match. Of course, at the time, looking back, well, they were, you know, stretching it out to the end of the show. But then when it was all said and done, it happened. Oh, I was so happy that they gave that away on WCW television.
That was wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you Mick Foley's the man. Love it. All right.
So you're number 2. Mine's already been given away. And if you don't think we have the same number 1, I'm fearful that your number 2 is my number 1. Carry the 1, subtract 0. So go ahead and give me your number 2.
Well, my number 2 is probably for that era, the era we're talking about. He did draw more money than Hulk Hogan. Maybe he is a bigger attraction than the Hulkster ever was. He definitely gets a louder pop. God, everybody loves him. He's the Texas Rattlesnake. He's Stone Cold Steve Austin. That's my number 2.
That's my number 1. So I'm out. That's it. I think he is the greatest ever, man. I think what he brought to that era, and especially going back and forth with The Rock in their different personas and everybody kind of in oh my God, who's bigger? You know, there's so much. The one's flashier, one's more brash. You know, for me, I was always team Stone Cold. Even though I loved everything that The Rock did.
Oh, me too.
I mean, the way that he fucked with Vince McMahon was legendary. And, you know, he'd show up in the hospital or he'd bust out his car. The one wrestler I wish could made my list, Kurt Angle, their battle, and the milk versus the beer baths and the big trucks that they drove down.
Yeah.
Like it always went to 11 every time he was out there, you know, and I always loved his shirt, you know, fuck fear, drink beer. You know, shout out to Mark. What's that? Yeah, that shirt. It's a wonderful shirt. Shout out to Mark Yeaton, always dropping beers on call, left and right. You know, he's catching them from everywhere, throwing them down. It was just a different level than anybody had ever seen.
Yeah.
You know, then no matter what he did, there was a time when he switched kind of and did the whole like watch and like the what, and I'm like, what are you doing, Stone Cold? Don't do this to me. Don't change. And all of a sudden now the whole crowd is chanting what? And like anytime another wrestler was talking and they didn't like him, he wasn't even out there. And everybody'd be like, what?
They still do. Yeah. Yeah.
You are controlling the crowd and you're not even part of this bit. Like, I mean, it's just whatever he chose to do. He had the momentum. He had the build up. And again, talking about countless matches, especially Rock versus Stone Cold. Those were like some of the greatest matches ever. But I mean,
yep.
It was amazing. And again, talking about multimedia after he hung it up, you know, the podcast, yep. the show on USA Network. I recently watched the show Hot Ones, where they eat hot wings and get interviewed.
Yes,
he's awesome on that, and he's you know, it's just he's a great guy. But I mean, at the time, there was no, you know, you heard the glass break, and wrestling is on. Like, you know, it's just like that's one of the most iconic. I mentioned the gong from Taker, but like that glass shatter sound, it's just always like. Everybody just whoa, you know, whatever. And he could appear in like 5 skits throughout the 2-hour show because they're building it up. Oh my God, where's he going? You know, walking in the back with his little leather vest on. No offense, it was a little leather vest, but it's like, oh no, McMahon better run, you know. And it's just like, I don't know. It was always something, and it just progressed on and on and on and on. He's on a bridge. What's he doing? And it's just, it made like the whole thing go together and be like a full story. It wasn't just like match to match to match. It was one of the first times where I was like, you know, okay, I'm not switching over to Monday Night Football anymore. I got to see how this progresses because this is going to pay off. The gun with the bang that comes out of it.
Bang 316. Yep.
Or sodomizing Vince McMahon with a catheter in the hospital or whatever he did. They didn't actually show that on TV, of course, but it was insinuated.
It was insinuated.
Some of the most fun that I had watching the show.
Well, first of all, I appreciate how you turned Jim Ross into Ross Perot there. I like the combination.
I think it was King and Jim Ross like together.
It was like Lawler had his high pitched that he would do and combine it with JR.
I didn't yell anything about puppies, and one of the guys I wish could made the list, Latino Heat. So shout out to Lawler. The things that always cracked me up. Latino Heat! Like that was cracked me up every time he said that. Fantastic, Eddie.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think you said it pretty much everything for Austin. And you talked about the glass breaking. I think it was either Hogan or Flair I heard say one time, they were talking about the reactions they get from the crowd. And they're like, you know, Hogan's like, hey, I get a big pop. Rick gets a big pop. But Austin is on a different level to this day. And, I mean, I don't know. The crowd loves him. He's one of, if not the only guy that has held out on, I'm not coming back to work one more match. Like I hung it up in 2003. I'm not, you know, he's of course come back and made appearances and things like that, but they've never been able to get him to come back and wrestle. And there's something to be said for that. And there's something to be said for how much the audience still misses him to this day. Cause he's still one appearance from him, that makes their show on Monday Night Raw.
I would buy that pay-per-view. I haven't bought a pay-per-view, I don't know, 20 years.
Yeah.
Pretty close, but I would buy the pay-per-view if Austin was going to wrestle again. But I don't think his knees can hold out. So that's why I included him, as someone that gracefully faded away, not quit to become a podcaster, not quit to make IPAs. Those are just things he chose to do now. But he quit because I don't think he could keep up at the level that he felt he wanted to. And that's all I, expect. And I think that's awesome. So that's why I still kept him on the list, even though, everybody would have wished he went longer. I think that was more physical than just like anything else.
Yeah. And you're a fan of his beer, right? You did like the Stone Cold IPA, the Broken Skull.
It was fine. I wouldn't say it's great. I'm not a huge IPA fan in general, but I mean, I thought it was fine. I did like hearing him talk about it, though. I liked the whole process and how involved he was about it. I listened to when I can and things of that nature. I think it's cool that he did it. Can look cool as hell, of course, but it's fine.
All right. Well, I think it's the best damn IPA that's ever been invented. So.
Oh, he just signed on. So, man, congratulations, dude.
Yeah, he follows
I thought I knew who your number one was. I thought it was going to be Stone Cold. So now I'm a little curious. I think there can probably only be one answer, but I'm curious to hear who your number one is now.
Oh, you don't want to steal my thunder and go ahead and say?
No, man. This is your topic. This is your dance floor, man. But I think I might know it. Wait, hold on. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write down, and we have not spoken about this ahead of time, other than the bullshit I text you, like that I'm going to pick Val Venus or whatever.
Val Venus.
Just to mess with you.
Well, he was the big Valboski, sir.
Imagine cancel culture with Rick Rude and Val Venus these days. All right. I wrote down who I think your number one is, so go ahead and drop it on us.
All right. His career spanned 4, maybe 5 decades. The 16-time heavyweight champion of the world. The greatest of all time. Just ask Stone Cold. He'll tell you it's the nature boy, Ric Flair.
Woo! Oh, no. It's not working. There it is.
Is that what that says? Did I say Ric Flair?
Yeah, my handwriting's kind of garbage, but that's what it says.
Okay, yeah. Making sure.
It is just RIC, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I spelled that right.
Yeah. You talk about transcending and being dedicated to the sport, sir. Like, they're making rap songs about Ric Flair in 2020. Come on. NFL teams have him come, and college teams have him come and speak for motivational stuff. I mean, just to get him fired up before a game. He's the nature boy. He's still, and that documentary, we're talking about documentaries. Do you see the 30 for 30 on ESPN that they did about? Oh, man, incredible. Loved it. I don't know. I mean, I go on and on. I grew up, again, I was lucky in this regard growing up in East Central Illinois, where we had the NWA and the WWF on TV, because that wasn't like that all over the country. And then when NWA became WCW, we still had that on TBS. And, so I was fortunate that I got to grow up in an area where I could see Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan at the height of pro wrestling in the 80s and into the 90s. And even their big crossover match they finally had in WCW, which should have happened in WWF. McMahon should have made it happen, But the Nature Boy was still winning titles into the year 2000, man, and beyond. So I'm glad that he has finally retired, because,
well, man, how many times has he cheated death? I mean, like in real life. Yeah. I mean, it was touch and go there for a little while, man. Yeah. A year or two ago, he was very, very sick. When they were making the documentary, they had to stop in the middle of it because he had to be hospitalized. And it was, that was very scary. But Nature Boy is still living large. And to me, he's the greatest wrestler of all time. Woo! Now, woo! Right. I mean, some of the greatest promos ever cut. I mean, the limousine ride.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel okay. I heard a woo.
You did? How'd that go again? A loud one. Give up, big.
Woo!
Nice.
And here's why. And if you're wondering where that noise is coming from, I have basically I have a Kindle, like my dad's computer, but I actually have a Kindle, and I'm watching
Yeah.
Preston Plays.
Oh yeah, because he needs more pub. Preston Plays for the.
Preston Plays. He's the nature boy of Kindles. That Preston Plays.
It's yes, it's a YouTuber that's worth about $7 million that needs an extra bump from our
That's
show.
what I'm saying. Preston's the Ric Flair of YouTube right now.
Maybe, but yeah, those promos, man, the suits and the like. I go back and Google them now because I think
Still
that's one of the, I didn't have the same exposure. I used to catch WWF at the time on Saturday or Sunday mornings. I think it was on USA, probably after Jabberjaw or whatever the hell I was watching. And that's when I caught Taker the first time in a lot of, highlight matches. And then house shows, and then, Attitude Era. So I really didn't get much Flair exposure. I didn't ever see NWA. I never saw WCW until they started battling, the Monday Night Wars. So I always heard of Ric Flair, but I never caught him really in his prime. So when I actually started watching him, it was like over the hill Ric Flair. But I will say the dude can sell a stunner like nobody else. He would literally go upside down on his head somehow and flip. And I always respected the guy, the knife edge chops, like his theatrics, the hair that would, it's a crimson mask, it's like everything is red from the back of his hair somehow. The dude bled harder than some of the people I've ever seen bleed. Like, the dude worked it. I have nothing against Ric Flair, and he is undoubtedly one of the top 6 wrestlers of all time because I named the top 5. But but I just couldn't put him on the list because, And again, I'm not a submission hold fan. I know I have Y2J on my list. Wells Jericho's cool. But overall, when someone goes out via submission, I don't find it exciting. So Figure 4 leg lock is iconic. I remember the first time as a kid trying it with someone and realizing that it really did hurt like a son of a bitch.
Yeah.
It's, it's a great move, but just like sitting there for, a minute waiting for someone to walk to the ropes and, or flip over and reverse. All that stuff was checkout time for Ryan. So I was just like, it wasn't really high on my list. So, but he is the man. He has an amazing tan and amazing hair.
He's the man with an amazing tan.
Why didn't he include that in his whole, repertoire? I don't know. I'm just glad. And I was waiting for it, but you did not include one single member of DX. And for that, I applaud you, sir.
Well, Shawn Michaels was strongly considered for my list. So was Bret Hart. Handful of other guys. I don't know. I wouldn't be able to look at myself in the mirror if I didn't have Ric Flair as my number 1. Okay, so the Nature Boy is number 1 in my heart and in my mind and in the wrestling mind of wrestling fans as a whole. So
I'm just texting Steve Austin to let him know that you think that.
You can tell the Rattlesnake because the Rattlesnake will be like, "Well, hell yeah, brother."
True.
He'll let you know that.
Hey, when did he become Hogan all of a sudden?
Well, I included a hell yeah with the brother.
All right, I dig it. Awesome, man. And I should bring up the fact that our new wrestling conversations have escalated due to the video game I've been playing on my phone. I don't even know why I'm playing it. WWE Champions, I haven't watched wrestling in 20 years.
You're texting me asking, "Hey, I got Bray Wyatt in my stable now. Is that good?"
Right. I'm like, why is he holding a lantern? What the hell is this all about? Now he's my best wrestler. But I did just recently get Honky Tonk Man, which is why I don't think he's on the top. But I've been begging for an old school guy, and I finally got my first. I got Ric Flair too. But are you started yet, man? What's going on?
Oh, I finally started playing that game a few weeks ago, and I can't. I have no good reason that I stopped playing it, other than I've been a little heavy on the sports betting the last couple of weeks. I've been spending more time on like DraftKings and FanDuel and stuff like that instead of playing the WWF game, WWE game. I'm playing. Here's the deal. When I lose, that's when I'm like, yep, you know what? I'm going to play something I know I can win. Like if I lose a little money, like I'm going to go back to the WWE game. That's fine. I'll go beat up Roman Reigns for a while. It'll be good.
Yeah.
But it's a fun game.
Who are some of the guys to keep an eye out that could? I mean, I honestly did think about putting Cena on the list because I felt he carried the torch for a long time when there was zero interest in there other than him. And he wrestled in jorts, which is like really hard to do because if you've ever worn jorts past your knee and tried to do anything, it's impossible, but he did that. And I also wanted to keep it in the ring, so I was really good. I think his Make-A-Wish contributions and like the hundreds of things that he does is really admirable, but I wanted to keep it in the ring. But who are the guys, you mentioned CM Punk or AJ Styles or something like that. I know nothing about them, but they couldn't crack a top 5. That I do know. Who should we keep an eye out for? Oh, man, you just disappeared.
I got low battery. You got a low battery. I'm at 20%. I'll tell you what. If you're watching WWE, I love what Bray Wyatt's doing right now. He's doing this like whole horror wrestling theme. Nobody's done it like this before. It's almost like the second coming of the Undertaker in a way with what he's doing. It's on a whole other level. I love what Bray Wyatt's doing right now. Definitely worth checking out. I'm in AEW. Just check out that product as a whole. I love AEW. It's such a good alternative. I love Hangman Page in AEW. And
what's up to do with his hands in his pockets, though?
Oh, that's Orange Cassidy.
What the hell's that about?
Well, his whole gimmick is that he doesn't care. He's so lazy and laid back. He just doesn't care, and he doesn't try, but he still finds a way to win. So, that's kind of that gimmick there. But it's fun, I guess. Our friend Tim is a much bigger Orange Cassidy fan than I am. I don't hate Orange Cassidy. It's just
his first name is Orange.
Yeah, he's Orange. His last name is Cassidy. Yes. Okay. Yeah. He's currently feuding with Jericho right now, as a matter of fact. Big feud with Jericho. So
he's losing.
But yes, he's going to lose. Nobody beats the Ayatollah of rock and roll. I'm trying to think of some other guys in WWE. I mean, it's Drew McIntyre, the current world champion in WWE. He's doing a great job there. He's a guy that came up. He was in WWE 10 years ago, didn't really get over. He got fired. He goes to the Indies and reinvents himself and comes back, and he's carrying the torch. And there's other guys like Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins and stuff like that. But if I'm tuning into WWE, it's because I want to see what's going on with McIntyre on Raw and Bray Wyatt on SmackDown. Okay. That's my humble opinion. And I love AEW on Wednesday nights. So check out, if you haven't, check it out. It's worth a watch. And Impact on Tuesday nights, Impact Wrestling. I was never a big Impact fan.
What is Impact?
That's TNA. That's what's left of TNA, basically.
One of my selling points for Rob Van Dam, obviously. I know all about it.
Yeah, we're RVD's there. There's a lot of guys, a lot of former WWE guys and homegrown talent there that are really, really doing their thing, and it's entertaining. It doesn't have the budget.
Nights, dude.
You got to
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, every night now, Thursday and Friday.
I'm sure there's something on Thursdays I'm not thinking about.
Probably New Japan, which I don't know anything about. So apologies to all the New Japan fans. I don't know anything about it. So I would like to include one of y'all, but I have no idea. I've never seen it.
keep it simple. You know, check out Bray Wyatt, check out Drew McIntyre, and check out AEW. I think you'll be, if you're into wrestling, I think you'll dig it. Or if you're someone like yourself that, you know, used to be a fan, you're not really watching much these days, I don't know if it'll pull you back in completely, but you'll be entertained at least when you watch it, man, for sure. So
I think I'm gonna do the DVR approach, and like so that I can forward through anything that's not coming in.
There you go.
You know, I think that's how I'm gonna dip my toe back in, so to speak, man.
There you go.
All right, buddy. What else is going on? You watching anything fun?
A lot of sports right now, man. I'm just happy watching a lot of the Blackhawks. Go Hawks. I'm disappointed that the Cardinals have got COVID-19, so the Cubs couldn't sweep them this weekend.
Yeah, you know, casinos were calling.
Yeah, they were. No, I'm just happy with sports being back for the most part. I'm going to watch it while I can because stuff could get canceled any minute now. I'm trying to get caught up on Perry Mason on HBO. I watched the first couple episodes. I enjoyed it. If you're a fan, if you like it, because it's on HBO. If you liked Boardwalk Empire, I think you'll probably dig Perry Mason. There's some stuff in it that's kind of hard to watch as a parent. There's stuff in it that's hard to watch involving little kids and yeah.
Oh, okay.
So there's a heads up for you on that one, but I think it's very well done. Good acting, and there are what was his name? He played Eli in Boardwalk Empire. Shay, I'm having a brain fart. Mm-hmm. He's on Perry Mason. A couple of actors that were on Boardwalk Empire are Perry Mason, so it's definitely worth checking out.
Okay.
Other than that, you know,
watched the new Pickle movie with Seth Rogen. It's on HBO, man. Max, but still all in the family.
You know what I've been watching a lot of? Old school 80s horror movies. I watched Sleepaway Camp Part 2 the other night.
I never saw the second one. Is that good?
Oh, it's not. I mean, it's 80s horror, but it's got an iconic death scene where the killer dispatches of one of their victims in a porta potty, and it's infamous because of how realistic it looked. And it's like it's all over. Like, it's one of those things that's on YouTube. People will look that up on YouTube, and it's got 100 million views. But other than that, there's no real reason people would remember Sleepaway Camp Part 2. So, but that's it for me. What about you? Anything good?
No, nothing. I got nothing. Right. I started watching Dave on Hulu.
Yeah.
It's all right.
All right.
Would not recommend. 4 out of 10. Would not buy. I don't know. It's a lot of self. You know, I'm not opposed to a good dick joke and stuff every now and then, but
clearly I know. Yeah.
It's all like self-deprecating humor that doesn't really go anywhere. It's got a few little laughs, but I ended up switching to old Key and Peele reruns and then fell asleep last night. So that's how I party, you know.
Well, you should watch AEW then on Wednesday nights. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised, sir. Set the DVR, watch an episode, see your boy Jericho do his thing. I think Jericho's still the best thing about AEW, in my humble opinion. He's so great. So
yeah, he's one of the top 5 of all time.
Of course.
Makes sense. All right, science is proven right once again. Thank you very much for coming and joining me, Curtis Allen. You're well. Grill awful.
Oh, can't wait. I grilled for my birthday. I'm going to do some more grilling tonight. Can't wait.
Sausages?
Yes, sir. And burgers, too. I had to, not everybody wanted Italian sausage with me, but I made peppers. I wrapped them in foil, butter, seasoning, put them on the smoker. Oh, brother. Oh, brother. Oh, it was good.
All right, buddy.